I'm sure I'm not pronouncing right
Okay,
at
it's
all. So sorry, Emilia. So before,
okay.
and if it is okay for both of you, we can start with Linda, and then Emilia, we can continue with you. Uh, it's okay? Okay, perfect. So before leaving the floor to Linda, I would like to introduce her to you. Linda Pedersen is a research associate exploring genetics and DNA analysis within the Refugee Family Reunion Project at King's College London. Linda is a lecturer in sociology and migration studies at the University of Greenwich with a focus on reproductive injustice, documentation practices, and transnational families. She has an academic background in philosophy and feminist studies, which informs her interdisciplinary approach to research. So, Linda, I can leave the floor to you. And sorry, she will present her research today entitled Making Transnational Families in Migra-Political Times, Thinking Through with Reproductive Injustice and Temporalities. So I can leave the floor to you. And you have around 15 minutes. I will
Okay.
let you know.
Okay. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Can you see my screen? Or
Yes, I
yes.
can just ask you to make it presentation mode. Then
Yeah.
it will be
Okay.
perfect.
So because when I go to the presentation mode, I can't see you.
Okay. If it creates
So
problem
okay,
for you, we
now
can also keep it like
no,
this.
no, no. Now
Okay.
I can see you. So okay, so you now you see everything. Yeah.
Yes.
Good. So perfect. So I'm really happy and also a bit excited to present this to you because this is very new for me. So and also you will see there's still some missing steps in my argument, but it's an argument that I'm trying to make about how to think actually temporalities into transnational family making, but actually also taking it from thinking about reproductive justice to actually those kind of like intersecting temporalities that I think we are working with. I some of us more explicitly, some of us more implicitly when we are working around family migration. So I'm just really trying, so thinking, of course, one of the questions, so what makes a family? How do we make families? When can we make families? So all these questions is kind of like coming up in the data that I have gathered for actually working with an NGO for over the last 10 years. So some of these questions of course are coming up. And of course, as we know with migration and migration management, temporality is quite a sensitive issue. So hopefully this is some of the points that I will make here, and I will have a lot of different concepts that I'm trying to work with, but I do have definitions for you. So hopefully we're not getting completely lost in concepts. So as I was just saying, so my research focus is mixed citizenship status families in Denmark. So it's actually families where at least one of the person in the family have Danish citizenship. And the selection of why one person with Danish citizenship is that then they have to go through the route of family unification through the Danish national rules, which have quite restrictive requirement for being family unified in Denmark. And one of them is that you have to be at least 24-year-old before you can actually even consider applying for family unification. Another one is you have to have appropriate housing with at least 2 rooms, and you also have to give a bank guarantee, and you have to have passed a Danish test as the Danish citizens. So it's not just enough you're Danish citizens, but you also have to have passed a Danish test at a level there's equal to, I think, secondary school. So and these are like a lot of the requirements is actually on the Danish citizens, and less actually on the foreign partner who is seeking family unification with the Danish citizen. So yeah, so that's the reason for actually the mixed status citizenship status families in Denmark. Another part of it is the intersection of reproductive justice and thinking it around border control. But of course, also thinking about not just justice, but a kind of like injustice that is following with very restrictive migration control as well. And then, so I think this is really the main focus, so really reproductive temporalities and how that intertwined or is entangled with the transnational family making. So that's the focus for my research. And then kind of like the two intertwined temporalities that I've seen is like coming through in my data is like, of course, again, the migration bureaucracy time, thinking about the legal processes, the paperwork, the delays, it's very like a time-consuming process to providing the documentation, the evidence, and the language test. So how that works, but not only for your first application, for your first visa, but also we know that when we have to extend our visa, so the whole process. So in Denmark, I think you're looking down at least 10 years, 11 years before you actually can consider to apply for permanent residency. So is it quite a long timeline that we're working with here? And then the other one, the other temporality that I'm interested in here is reproductive time. So thinking about the biological urgency. So that's coming from talking with the women, pregnant women, and also thinking about reproduction, becoming pregnant. So that there have been that kind of urgency coming out in my data. And in the beginning, I didn't do research where I was thinking about actually reproduction within family migration, but I got contacted by quite a few women who was about to give birth, and there was this kind of urgency in the contact and also when they wanted to be interviewed with me because they felt the story was so present, and also and one of the things that's coming out here is that a lot was themed about whether they were very concerned about whether the baby will come first or they actually the first visa for the partner to come to Denmark. So there was these two again, so you can see like how the two temporalities, so what makes the family here again is coming together. So the reproductive time and also the migration process. So that's come up to that what I've seen. So what I'm calling here the tensions between the maternal body and the bureaucracy. And I think, and also another one, I'm a bit wary to use that is like ideas of the biological clock, because I think it has some very normative ideas with it when we're thinking about the maternal body. So then coming again, so thinking about family unification policy is a form of reproductive governance. So it's a way of like controlling population. And also thinking about citizenship status as a way of structuring reproductive legitimacy. So actually to think about whose reproductive rights are promoted, who were we thinking about when we have, you know, the last New Year, the speech from the Danish Prime Minister was very much concerned about that the Danes, they need to produce more kids. We need to have more children in Denmark. And it was definitely not the migrant families or the transnational families that she had in mind, because it was nothing about making it easier for families, for transnational families to live in Denmark. So again, like the legitimacies of the families. And then so immigration laws is actually acting as a tool of what I've called here selective pronatalism, as reproduction is becoming a very time-sensitive issue. So there's again the kind of selection and deselections about pronatalism. And then of course we have these ideas also about racialized narrative of hyperfertility also tends to influence the politics. So here I'm thinking about welfare support for they're trying to cut welfare support, especially with people who've been having a migration history. So that's both for like Danish citizens and non-Danish citizens. So if you actually have been outside Denmark, you actually are losing your rights to certain benefits and child benefits and other benefits in Denmark. So again, and with that idea of that, it tends that the public narrative have been that it's migrant families that have more kids than other families. So there's this idea again about hyperfertility. I'm trying to make the argument have been influencing the policies. So just a little bit more about the studies. How much time do I have left?
You still have some 6,
Good.
7 minutes. Yeah.
Good. So then just a little bit about the research. So I had 17 semi-structured interviews, mainly pregnant women or recent moms. And also, I should have included here also people who were thinking about having children, and did extensive participant observation within a legal advisory service, where I'm also being very active in advising people, supporting people with their casework for family unification applications. And all the recruitment happens basically through this NGO called Marriage Without Border. And of course, like community networks and Facebook had also been very prolific in actually recruiting people. And the interviews were conducted in English and Danish, and sometimes actually also in Spanish and Swedish as well. So, the language that was available. And of course, the Legal Advisory Center has been like quite a field site for me. And then thematic analyses, like looking for family planning and definitely urgency, migration, bureaucracy, and indeed, so one of the themes that kept coming up was like that press for time. People really feel squeezed for time, and yeah. And also in that, what came up is a lot of them really have like very detailed plans and timeline for when they could do what. And I thought that was really interesting because planned pregnancy and the way they want to space their pregnancies was also included in their plans about for when did they have to renew their family unification visa. I think that was really interesting. That kind of the biological part was also intertwined with actually how they had to do, when did they have to renew their visa. So that was actually what led me onto this idea. And now I'm coming to more about the conceptual framework. So just to explain a little bit what I'm trying to do here. So what is Migra-Politics? It's a term coming from Carrie Thompson's. What she's saying, so she's been working a lot within reproductive technologies, and I find it very productive for my thinking because it's kind of connecting some concepts for me to think through. So for her, this is at the intersection. So micropolitics is intersection of migration, kinship, citizenship, and what she's saying, reproductive technologies. But I would actually have a lot more thinking about the kind of technologies that is used for making the case for your application here, and also what we can do thinking through Migra-Politics, like exam how states policies and social norms shapes who can reproduce, where, and especially when they can, and under what conditions. What again want to use this concept of like how immigration policy actually really shapes family formations and reproduction. And now I'm just throwing some other concepts at you that I'm trying to think through in analyzing my data. So one that I really think is key here. And also, I think thinking about transnational family making is, in a way, we also can situate this within the debates about abortion, transnational adoption, some other fields that we normally don't think through when we are thinking about migrations and thinking about family making within migration. We tend to keep those different forms and modes of family making separate, but I actually think it's very fruitful to think them together. So definitely reproductive justice, thinking about the right to the right to have, not have, and parent, and actually parent your children. I think it become very relevant when we're thinking about family migration. And then there's another one also thinking about migration is stratified reproduction, so transnational gender care chains that displace the reproductive labor of the more affluent onto the backs of less affluent as well. It's kind of a useful one to thinking about the different hierarchies or that takes place in family making. And another concept that I already mentioned is also selective pronatalism, is actually thinking about the ways states actively and passively promote the reproduction of some over the reproduction of others. And just thinking about what I was saying about who is like considered as hyperfertile, and the kind of like racial ideas that comes with. And then another concept is I think being very fruitful for my think is fertility continuum is actually like the way of ranking by race, class, disability, gender, and nation of the value of actually your pregnancy, childbirth, and childbearing and motherhood. And then another one that I'm really I'm kind of quite excited about is the chronobiopolitics from Dana Luciano's term, which actually described the normative temporal organization of entire population around capital, nation, and families. So that's one I want to actually to dive more into, but not in this presentation today. And this is just a little bit about the move from actually reproductive rights to versus justice. So often reproductive rights have been kind of very narrow, been centered about abortion, the right to abortions, and often been about white middle-class women, and been focused on freedom to control own reproductions and seek to secure legal rights, and been very much a law-focused and individualistic. Whereas I really like the aspect from the reproductive justice movement actually been started by people of color and more low-income folks. And I have this intersectionality focus, and also thinking about the control of own body, not only that, but also to parent with dignity, to actually have the possibility to parent your children. And one thing that we know from studying actually family migration is often that those families live with the condition or the risk or the harm of actually can be separated. So separated is actually one of these concept that I should have been writing into here, but actually separation, the fear of being separated, it is quite prominent when we are discussing family migration, but also with the couples, if there is one of the requirements, or if they have forgotten a date, they didn't renew the visa on time, then the separation is often the next step. So we have talked in the UK, we have about the Skype family. So again, I think that's really important for us to, again, thinking about reproductive justice also to parent, to be the parent of our children, and to parent also, not only parent, but also with dignity. And of course, then what they're also saying is like seeks to dismantle the barriers to access, and indeed from the Danes perspectives, like also trying, of course, to dismantle all these requirements there are to be family unified family in Denmark, because part of like the requirement is that you have to fulfill all these requirements every time. You also have to renew your permit. So it's not at the first entry, but it's a continuous way that you have to fulfill the requirements. I think this is a very useful approach. So actually also seeks to dismantle the barrier to access, and of course it's social justice focus, and it has a lot more collective and structural, trying to be more collective and structural, not place responsibility on the individual or claim as an individual rights. Yeah, and that just brings me to what I think is some of the key contributions from my data is actually expand the reproductive justice to transnational family migration context, and also the impact of the bureaucratic control over reproductive futures. So actually also to thinking about futures. So what kind of families is that has values and also perceived as the future families of the nation. And in a way also trying to challenge these national ideas of desirable reproduction. And lastly, also links the maternal body with the state power through bureaucratic temporalities. So this is my attempt to actually thinking through these two temporalities, thinking about bureaucratic time and the maternal body reproductive time as well. So I think I'll end here. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Linda. Okay. So sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Suddenly